So, what's a higher dose in milligrams, of the, psilocybin that you use?
Psilocybin, well, it seems to hit a kind of asymptote to sort of plateau around about 30 milligrams, where you're not really getting and much more of the intensity of the sort of positive therapeutic aspects of the experiences. And a lot of emphasis there on these mystical or spiritual type experiences. Emotional breakthrough is more the kind of way that we frame it, among colleagues. You tend to hit a kind of plateau with that experience around 30 milligrams, and then if you go above, you start to bring in you start to trade in terms of getting more confusion um, with the experience. So yeah, we think 25, 30 is kind of the sweet spot. And if you give any more than that, 25, 30 milligrams
Yes.
of psilocybin, if
Yes.
you go above that, you just risk having people who are sort of disorganized in thought, confused, and aren't necessarily getting the more positive aspects of the experience, including the insight. The psychological insight isn't necessarily facilitated by going above those doses that are pretty high.
Would you hazard a guess on a dosage appropriate specifically used for creativity?
It's tricky, because the evidence for enhancements in creativity is a bit mixed. We've got a lot of anecdote and cases there, but it's a very hard thing to test in the studies. So um, I know that's not a clear response, but I'm waiting to see a really well done study that does actually show enhancements in creativity in relation to the psychedelic experience. Um, so I don't know. I mean, the big doses, 25, 30 milligrams, do promote psychological insight. Typically, we score that the next day, or participants score it. But they can also do it, 1 week later or a month later. But we have seen in predictive models that yes, the big doses they promote emotional breakthrough. Then that promotes psychological insight. So the evidence for creativity, I think most of it, I think if we're being really fair and quite strict as we should be scientifically, then I think it's fair to describe it more as a interesting hypothesis than something really well established. Part of the tricky issue is that it's very difficult to test creativity, to kind of squeeze it into a study. When it happens, it's usually more a thing that sort of happens all of a sudden almost, or seems to. So it's quite hard to pin down and study, and maybe that's why the clear evidence for psychedelics promoting creativity is a bit thin on the ground. But we do have clear and quite compelling evidence of psychedelics promoting psychological insight. So a deeper awareness of oneself, the causes of one's mental health challenges, and psychedelic therapy experiences fostering um, experiences of insight seem to be very important for then advancing people's mental health and improving it. And so that's a kind of creativity, I think. Um, yeah. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I think the hypothesis is interesting. It's just designing a good study to really demonstrate it. I'm aware of Jim Fadiman's work in the 60s around that hypothesis. But again, I think if it was to be tested these days, it would probably be tested in a slightly different way to try and demonstrate the effect. So yeah, more work to be done there, I think.